I'm going to start getting into some of the characters' strengths and how I use them, and some of the equipment that you want to be on the search for to make the best character you can make. The first characters I'm going to group in because they're all amazing and I use them throughout most of the game, and there's like 4 characters at the bottom that all kind of suck. They're not totally bad, but I didn't use them a lot, so that's why they're at the bottom. Locke. He seems as if he is one of the main characters of the game, and he is a very important character of the game. And he has cool abilities such as the Steal command, which you can then eventually turn into Mug, which then both does the Steal action and does damage as if he were to attack. So Locke is useful for that reason. He can steal very useful items and equipment from different enemies. So some of the armor and equipment and relics to apply to him to make him the best to be on the lookout for would be the Genji glove. That will allow him to dual wield his physical weapons such as the Lightbringer, which is the best weapon in the game. You'll have to first find the Ragnarok for, which is another awesome weapon that he will obtain eventually in the world of Ruin. And that also allows him to cast the ability Flare, which is cool. That some of these weapons also does magic damage with them. So that's one cool thing with Locke. Do the Genji glove. He's attacking with both hands. Then apply the Master Scroll, and that's one of the best relics of the game you can get. And that essentially lets him attack twice. So you can just rack up tons and tons and tons of damage if you're wielding a Genji glove and a Master Scroll. And Locke is one of the best characters with that combo. Alright, another useful character that you will get kind of early in the game actually is Edgar, King Edgar. And his best weapon early on is his auto crossbow. That will attack the multiple enemies, front row and back row, and it does deal a lot of damage. I even found myself using that weapon in the late game a lot because, at least for the weaker enemies, just because of the fact that it is a multi-enemy attack weapon. So that's a very useful weapon for him early on. But where he really shines is when you get the Dragoon boots, and eventually be on the lookout for the Holy Lance, or the Radiant Lance is another good option, or just any spear actually in general, because I think I was even just using the Partisan spear for a long time, and that was dealing a lot of damage. So what it does, the Dragoon boots, is it changes the attack command to jump, which is awesome for evading any attack. So it wastes kind of a turn, but it makes you evade the attack, which is excellent. And then you skydive from above and with the spear on the enemy. It's badass and it deals a lot of physical damage. So that mixed with the dragon horn allows it to happen twice. So with Edgar and that combo just right there, you're gonna deal a lot of damage. Alright, the next character I want to talk about, which was one of my favorite characters, was Mog. Kupo, that guy. He is just a cute character. He's fun to play with, but he's also such a tank. He's almost overpowered just because of his abilities. He has a dance ability early on that I didn't end up using all that much, just because you get magic very quickly and he has good magic damage, especially when you get to magic like Ultima. Wow, he's a force to be reckoned with. But also, more than that, I almost use him as an Edgar mimic, because I also apply a spear to him. The Radiant Lance is a good backup if you have Edgar using the Holy Lance, and put the Dragoon boots on him and he's gonna deal so much damage and be very versatile from a physical attack stance and a magic attack, and his defense is just amazing. So Mog is definitely one of my favorite characters. He's in my A team for sure. Alright, next I'm going to talk about the character Terra. She's probably one of the main characters in the game, and for good reason. She's one of the strongest in her magic abilities, and one of the first that you can use magic with, which is super helpful when you need to start curing your party members and eventually reviving them in the game, and a lot of magic protection abilities and such. So she's very useful early game for her magic ability when everyone else doesn't have it yet, and even late game she's very strong. Her special ability is Trance, which will cause twice the amount of damage, and the magic damage received is halved. So it wastes a turn, but it's probably worth it for the stat boost. You know, she's able to equip lots of awesome weapons like the Lightbringer and such, and deal physical attacks if you want to use her that way. But I didn't. I mainly just used her as a magic mage, because once you get Ultima, I mean, I'll just say it now, Ultima is the ultimate move in this game. I shouldn't say that actually, because there are combos with the right relics that you could probably surpass that. But as far as magic and ease of use and all that stuff, it's probably one of the best moves in the game. Celes is another character that's amazing in her magical ability, and I basically kind of use her as a Terra replica. So I kind of have them at opposite parties a lot. They are so similar in their abilities, so I like to have an offensive mage and a healer basically in each party, and her and Terra are kind of interchangeable in that way. Now she doesn't have the trance ability, but what she does have is an ability called Runic, which is very useful early game and in certain situations late game. But basically that is like she holds up her sword and it draws in all the magic, so no one gets hurt if the enemy is casting magic. It just gets absorbed into her runic ability and no one gets hurt. So that's a good strategy for certain situations. Relm is another very interesting character. She's very good with her magical ability as well. She starts off with the ability Sketch, which isn't useful pretty much quickly. As soon as you start teaching her offensive magic, that's where she shines. She's very beefy heavy in the magic department. So if you need a third alternative to Terra and Celes, Relm's pretty good. And just to have extra attack magic in your party and whatnot. Strago is also another magic character. I didn't use him a ton just because I've already had Terra, Celes, and Relm I was mainly using for the heavy magic users. But Strago is another one that's pretty good with his magic, especially when you learn Ultima. Sabin was actually one of my favorite characters in the game. I loved his backstory early on when we were getting to be introduced to him, and I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil anything. I wish there was more backstory, because late game, it's kind of a toss-up. He's still very strong, but he does lack some armor and equipment that other characters are able to get. Not saying he's totally useless and weak. There are certain relics and such you can stack on him to make him a useful teammate. Which one of those weapons is the Tiger Fang, which deals a lot of damage. But like I said, a lot of his armor and such are just kind of nothing special. His blitzes are awesome, especially for multi-enemy attacks. And, especially if you mix him with the Genji gloves, I kind of use him almost like a Locke alternative in some ways for like a beefy physical power player. So I'll usually dual wield him with the Genji gloves, and then also if I can, steal or borrow Locke's Master Scroll, Sabin does deal a lot of damage too, so he's not one to be overlooked. Plus, you can eventually teach him other magic and stuff. It's not as strong as some of the other more magic-centric characters, but he's still a very fun character and one of the funnest in this game. I really enjoyed him as a character and his storyline. The last character I will touch on that is kind of before the sucky part where I don't want to use him, but I'm including him in a good, useful character because late game he is useful and he is pretty strong, and that's Shadow. he's kind of a butthole early on, and I'm gonna warn. This might be a spoiler, but not really, because he's gonna leave your party. You're gonna hire him to join your team. He's gonna just leave you randomly and piss you off and steal any items you equip him with. So he frustrates you a lot early on. He's not a likable character really until the end, kinda. You will have a chance, if you don't leave him behind, to have him rejoin your party, and then he won't leave again. And then he's useful, because then he'll have actually strong weapons and such to be using. But yeah, he's that borderline character I don't love to use, but late game, he is useful. Now, to the last few characters that I would put towards the bottom of the list. And these are not really ordered, it's just useful and not as useful. So, Setzer is very, very strong late game after you get his fixed dice. So that's the weapon you want to be on the lookout for, or maybe you want to search up another guide on how to get it late game, but that's where he becomes super strong when it's mixed with the Master Scroll. So you have to stack his items in a certain way to make him that strong. But he's also useful because he is decent with magic. You know, I was using Ultima with him quite a bit when he was in my party. Early game though, like, he has the ability to do these slots, and I hate luck stuff. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the slots. It's just too much of a chance. It worked for me sometimes, but I never ended up using it once I got magic, so that's Setzer in a nutshell. Cyan, I liked his character. He was a very interesting character. I loved his backstory and everything. But late game, he's kind of worthless and useless. He's too slow. He only does good physical damage. His magic sucks. And maybe it was just me as well, but his it's called a Bushido something, I don't know what it's called. It's a special ability he has that takes way too long to use, and it's all written in a foreign language, so you kind of have to memorize what symbols do what, at least on the menu that this mod had. Maybe you can change that too, but I don't know. I found it kind of frustrating, and like I said, early game he is pretty strong, but I didn't use him a lot late game. So if you want to learn how to use him better, I recommend looking up a character guide, which I'll link in the description below, where you can find character guides on all these people, all these characters, if you want to look more into depth on how to use them offensively, defensively, physically attack, focused, or magic. Another character that I did not use hardly at all is Gao. He is this wild boy that you pick up in the savannah, I don't know, somewhere on the map. And he's not, I won't say he's the weakest character. He's just random. He has an ability called Rage, and I know there are certain relics and stacks and combos and such people have put on him to make him super strong, but I just didn't go that direction, because I like to choose what attacks are happening and such. So yeah, so again, look up a character guide for Gao if you want to learn how to use him the best, because I just didn't use him a lot. The last character I will touch on is Umaro. He's a late game character, like the Abominable Snowman. He's interesting, he's strong, he's kind of a physical tank, but again, he's a random attack player, so I don't leave those things up to chance, especially with boss fights and such. He's like, Gao and Umaro are probably fun characters to play if you're just searching for items across the map and want to just beat up on random enemies and such. It's just to kind of feel out, you know, some of the abilities they have. But yeah, again, he's not going to be in my A team, probably not my B team. He's going to, you know, just be a random character that I just want to see what fun abilities he might have.